Let's see.
Yeah, let's see.
But I don't think so it's gonna be like bad or something. It's
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We'll just give folks a chance to get their audio connected, and then we'll jump right into today's session. Okay, let's get started. Thank you for being here today. On behalf of Smart Dolphins, I'd like to welcome you to today's session on Power Automate for financial professionals and accountants. My name is Matthew, and I am the marketing coordinator here at Smart Dolphins. Firstly, I would like to remind everyone that this session is recorded. This recording may be published so that it is available to the public via our YouTube channel. The Q&A section of the webinar will remain private and the identities of participants will be protected. However, if you speak during the presentation, you may appear in the published version of the recording. You are encouraged to ask questions throughout the webinar, but please type your questions in the Q&A section to remain anonymous. If you are an accountant seeking CPD hours, you are entitled to 1 CPD hour for attending this course. To collect this hour, you must stay till the end of the session. At the end of the webinar, you will be able to submit your name and email address to receive your CPD certificate. Before handing it over to our trainer, I'd like to quickly share some information on our upcoming public webinars. On February 13th, we'll be covering ChatGPT, exploring the latest features and updates. On February 20th, we'll be covering the new Outlook AI-driven innovations. And on February 27th, we'll be covering cybersecurity for leaders and management. Please visit our website for more information and to register. If you have any questions today, please pop them into the Q&A section here in the Teams, and we'll tackle them as we go along. We'll also save some time at the end for discussion and Q&A. There is a link to the handout located in the chat today. Please feel free to download that and follow along. I'd now like to introduce our trainer for today's presentation. It's a great pleasure to welcome Jolynn Reen. She is a certified trainer and Microsoft Master Instructor with over 30 years of experience. So without further ado, Jolynn, please take it away.
Sounds good. Thank you so much, Matthew. And as Matthew said, welcome everybody to our session today on Microsoft Power Automate. So when we talk about, what exactly is Power Automate, there's a lot of words within your Microsoft apps that refer, excuse me, sorry about that, that refer to the word power. So Power Automate is going to be referring to cloud-based services that we can use to automate processes. So as we go throughout the session today, what I want you to be thinking about is when you're working throughout your day, are there some times or some things that you come across that you wish could be automated? Are there things that you do on a regular basis that you have to always do this, or you have to go here to do this, but you would like it to be more of a steady flow of what's going on with your systems? Microsoft Power Automate gives us those capabilities. It goes beyond the capabilities of just being able to automate a task. It can do a lot more than just automate. It can actually change data. It's similar to me, and I was mentioning this to Matthew before we got started, but when we use Power Automate, you may not have the full capabilities depending on your rights on the system. And you do need to understand a certain few aspects behind the scenes, but I'll point those out as we kind of go through. What exactly is it and how do we create different automation processes? We will see that we can build Power Automate options. We can build them from scratch. We can use templates. There's a lot of different ways, and we'll kind of see those today. But there are some that I use pretty regularly, at least once a week, if not more, that are actually built in that we don't need to understand any type of programming. So if anyone is familiar with programming or creating macros in Microsoft Access and things like that, Power Automate works similar to that because we need to create it saying, this is the action that I, kind of in your head, you plan ahead. And we want to be able to say, okay, this is what I want the automation to do. This is the software that is going to be required to automate this process, to automate this workflow. We need to be thinking about where and what the names are of any files or software applications, any links that we need to know about on how to get to something. All of that is part of the planning process to create an automation. But like I said, some of these are built in. We don't have to build them. I'll show you both because I want you to understand what all this is. But let's talk about what Microsoft Power options you have, because it's a lot of different apps in the Power tools that we have available. Power BI is probably something you've already heard of. We don't cover Power BI today. Different sessions for that. But Power BI is part of the Power Automate tools available through your Microsoft 365 Copilot, which, by the way, that's a new name. If you didn't attend these sessions that we've had recently about the new Microsoft branding, things are now called Microsoft 365 Copilot. So Power Automation options are available through your 365. There's Power Apps, and that's really kind of what we're going to be talking about today is some of the Power Apps that are available. You can see that it says low-code platform for building custom business applications, where Power BI is a great visual tool that we have built in, but usually in an organization, only specific people work with Power BI. We don't usually have everybody in an organization working with Power BI. What we're going to be focusing mainly on today is Power Automate, where we want to automate workflows. As I said, we'll see how to create ones from scratch, templates. We'll see some that are actually built into some of our applications, and of course different ways that you can use or start an automation directly within an application. We also have two others, not as common, not ones that we're really going to focus on today at all, but we have Power Pages now, and we have Power Virtual Agents. Agents is a big part of the new announcements for 2025 from Microsoft, so eventually you'll be hearing more and more about these agents, especially with Copilot. And Copilot is built in to Power Automate. We're going to see that, of course, here today. So the information in your handout, just so everybody is aware, is it's really just describing what exactly is Power Automate at the beginning, and then going through and giving you the purpose, the functionality, and some use cases for the different Power platforms that we have that I have been showing on the screen. But let's get into Power Automate. First, I do want to talk about different ways to access Power Automate. One way is you can actually go to Microsoft Teams. If you are in Microsoft Teams, in a little bit before we're done with our session today, I'll talk about things that will automatically show up in Microsoft Teams for you coming from Power Automate. But if you want to access the program, the actual Power Automate app, you can do so by adding it to the navigation on the left-hand side. So if you go into View More Apps, you could simply put in, and I'll just start typing Power, and oops, let me back up there because it was right here. I can see Power Apps right here. I'm going to click Add just so you can see that it will show up. But a little bit later when I talk about using built-in workflows through SharePoint, we can also access Power Automate directly through the activity here in Microsoft Teams. So you'll see that by the end of the session today as well. But anyway, when you come in this way, you can see how to create an app for Teams. You can see that, well, I'm going to skip that right here, but you can see that it's got some suggested templates that we could be using. I'm not going to use the program directly through here, but just so you could see, you could access Power Automate from here. I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint here for a second, let me show you one other way, which is probably the way I use it the most, is I log into my Microsoft account. I go to the internet, I go to my m365.cloud.microsoft.com website, web address, and I can go directly to my apps launcher on the top left. So you have access to all of your different programs that you have rights to from this list, which includes Power Apps. If I click Power Apps, this will take me into the main program, the main window, to access all of our Power programs, all of the Power Apps. So let me get that open here real quick. Now, once this opens, you're going to see a navigation pane on the left-hand side. Whatever, of course, you click on from the left will change what you're going to see on the right-hand side. So as I'm kind of going through this, I want you to be envisioning, what you do and where this could come in to help you, how this can assist you. So keep that in the back of your mind as we go through these. So anyway, right now I'm on the home category. On the right-hand side of the screen, you can see that it says, let's build an app. What should it do? You have some prompt suggestions. Just like using Copilot, we get prompts where maybe we need to be collecting RSVPs. We need to track sales leads or list inventory or manage inspections. This list at the top, these suggested prompts, that does change on a regular basis, but it also is giving you this box at the top where you could start chatting, where it says use everyday words to describe what your app should collect, track, list, or manage. And also on this main screen, in the middle of the window, other ways to create an app is start with data, start with page design, start with an app template. Then you're going to see your apps listed below. So that's all you're seeing on this main screen. And to be honest, I never use the main window. The home, I never use it because it doesn't give me what I normally come in here for, which is probably the same thing you're coming in for. On the left-hand side, let's go to Create. From the left-hand side, when you click Create, this is going to be where you can go to create your workflows. Now, this isn't the only way to do it, of course, but this is a great way to get started, or one of the great ways to get started, because you can see that it gives you create your app, start from a blank app, or you can start from these different programs. You can scroll down and start from different templates. And these templates always give you the name of the template, and underneath it, it's going to show you the app that is required for that template. So I can see this one called Help Desk, where I could actually create an app to help with help desk issues, but it's going to use an app called Canvas. Okay, so just so you're understanding what you're seeing. Now, this isn't usually, for me, where I go, but this is a starting point if I want it. What I would suggest all of you do, if this is all brand new to you, go to the left-hand side and click Learn. I also, at the end of your handout, I gave you a few websites that I feel are helpful to kind of get to know this a little bit better as well. But and you can see I just got a message that popped up. And I have the updated version of this, by the way, just so you're aware, there has been some changes to Power Apps. So if you don't have the updated version, yours might look a little bit different, but what we're going to be referring to in the examples I'll do work the same. Basically, they all work the same, but the windows and the user interface does look a little bit different. But what this is going to give you is the capability of going through some lessons to learn more about Power Automate. And I do recommend you do this, because when we get in there, you're going to see it may not be as easy as you might think for some of these. So I'll walk you through what I mean. But first off, it's letting you know, it's just giving me a window that says select your experience level. I'm just going to say got it, because we can go to our experience level and see the content related to that level. So if I want to start, of course, at the beginner level, I'm going to go to beginner and I'm going to go through the different lessons based on beginner. You can see at the top right, there's also courses, there's community. Community is actually really nice because they'll give you some updates and announcements. So here's some new things that are coming, etc. You can go into articles and their support. So just so you could see, there's a lot of different options available through the learning category on the left-hand side. But I'm going to go back to the left and I'm going to click apps. On the left-hand side, I'm clicking apps. And this is where you can see a list of the apps that I am actually using within different workflows. I can see my apps I have shared with me, and I have this category for all. These are different things that I have created or that I have access to. You can see when it was modified, who the owner is, and what type it is. So like this one is Canvas driven from the IT support ticket. But up at the very top are some prompts. Once again, we get those starting points that we could use. So we could start with Copilot to create a new workflow. We could start with data, pages, or we could start with an apps template. But I don't always go there either. On the left-hand side in this new user interface, we also have tables. I won't spend any time really here on tables, but just to show you what this is going to give you is we can actually create and manage visual tables, a whole nother day for something like that. But where you will probably come to the most on the left-hand side is going to be flows. Flows is going to give you access to your current workflows and the ability to create new ones. If mine ever opens here, sorry, for some reason it's been a little slow. But just so you could see, also on the left-hand side, there is a solutions. There's also this more category where we can access all of these other. And by the way, we can pin these to stay on the left-hand side. So agents is one that eventually here I'm going to be pinning because that's going to be a big part of Power Apps as well. So just so you can see, we can add and remove these different options from the left-hand side. Now, I don't know for sure why my flows is not opening here. But in the meantime, I can also go into Power Platform where I can have access to Power Automate, Power BI, Power Pages, Copilot Studio, etc. Just so you're aware. So my window did finally open up to my flows. So what I want to show you, and this is flows really is referring to workflows. So that's an abbreviation for what we refer to as workflows. So when we talk about creating a workflow, that is going to be our automation. So if we think about every time something new is added to this list, I want to know about it. We could actually create a notification for that. We could say every time that a file is added to this document library, I want to know. Or I want to know if a new item is added to a Microsoft list. Or I want to take these rows of data based on this criteria in Excel, and I want to copy them to another workbook, to another sheet. Think of the things that would help you in your day-to-day job. No matter what your job title is, you might be an AR, you might be an AP, you might be the CFO, whatever your job is, think about things that you have to do regularly and see if there's something that Power Workflows can actually help you to automate. Now, we'll go through a few examples, of course, but up at the top, under flows, it says cloud flows, desktop flows, shared with me. So just so you're seeing, those are going to be the list of things that we can use to get started. This is going to be one option for you. But if you wanted to look at what cloud flows really are, there's a couple of examples here. One is send me an email when a file is modified in OneDrive. So let's say that in your OneDrive, you're saving files and you have a couple of them shared with somebody else. There isn't an automated way within OneDrive to get that notification unless you create a workflow. It's a little bit different with SharePoint or Teams because they're using a document library, which I'll show you how we can automate that through those applications. But I could do that right from here, especially with a file that I've shared with somebody else. Otherwise, they're my files. I don't need a workflow for that. But if I'm sharing a file with somebody else, that could come in handy. Also, send me an email when a new message is added to the Microsoft Teams channel. So if I'm the person that's responsible for my accounting department team within SharePoint, or I should say within Microsoft Teams, I have this team and I have a channel for accounts payable, accounts receivable, etc. And I want to know if somebody puts a post in one of those channels, I could actually set up a workflow to do that. The icon that you're seeing on the left-hand side of each of these is representing the main application that is needed to create this flow. So if you don't have that application, unfortunately, you wouldn't be able to use it. But the ones we'll talk about, you definitely have access to. But otherwise, create tasks in Planner from records in an Excel workbook. We could actually say from this Excel table, we wanted to add these rows of information to a planner within a Microsoft team or from a SharePoint site or wherever it resides. Also, SharePoint list records to email. We have customized, send a customized email when a new SharePoint list item is added. And that's actually one that I use. I have a couple of SharePoint lists that keep track of different information, and I need to know when something new is added to that list, so I go take a look at it and make sure that it's being sent and handled the way that it's supposed to be. Post a message to Microsoft Teams for a selected file, or request sign-off. I'm actually going to show you how to use request sign-off, but it's not going to be through here. It's actually built directly within the SharePoint document library. But up at the top, we also have desktop flows. We also have generative actions, which is in a preview state right now. You may not see all of this, and then I have shared with me. Flows can be shared with your coworkers. So if you create a flow or somebody in your IT department creates a flow, they could share it with you, just so you're aware. And you could see when I look at some of these, it's giving information about these. So like if I look at this one where it says, add an item to SharePoint and send an email. So it's going to use these programs from the icon, and down at the bottom, it tells you that it's going to be an instant flow. So what that means is sometimes when we create a workflow, we want it to go immediately. We want it to automatically be activated. Great, we could do that. Or it can be based on a trigger, like something new being added, or in this Excel workbook, this word is added, this department name is added to this column. It could trigger the workflow to run. Or we can basically click on a button to run a flow. So we have different ways to activate them. Okay, so you'll hear words like triggers. But just so you're aware, at the top of this right-hand side, the top left of this right-hand side of the window, you can click New Flow. From the drop-down menu in this new user interface, you could choose, do you want to start from a template or do you want to build your own from a blank? I'm going to show you the blank first. I'm going to say I want an automated cloud flow, but I could create an instant, a scheduled, I could describe it to design it, or I can go into desktop. I just want to show you first this one, automated cloud flow. When you come in, the first thing that it's going to ask you, and it gives you a little bit of information on the left-hand side, which is nice, is up at the top, it needs a name. So I'm going to name this, and I'm going to name it Auto Test Flow. And down at the bottom, I can search for triggers, or I can look at this list of triggers. I could scroll up and down, and what the trigger means is when a new response is submitted. So somebody fills out a form and the form is submitted, a Microsoft form, and the form is submitted, we want to get notified. or when an item is created in SharePoint. So these are things that can trigger a flow to run. Okay, Matthew, did somebody have a question?
Really great.
Good. Great.
It's going to be fun.
No, I don't believe
So she's
there's
going to go home
any
and try to
questions
set
at
up
the
her
moment.
Microsoft.
I'll
Okay.
just hold on.
Get that person muted. Okay,
Yeah,
thank you. Appreciate that.
Sorry about that.
I heard something and it's like, wait
Yeah.
a second, I better check. So anyway, these triggers give you ideas as to what can trigger a workflow to run. So when a file is created in OneDrive, when a task is assigned to me in Microsoft Planner. So it's just giving you some ideas, and I do recommend that you kind of scroll through this list. So let's say that I need to know when a file is modified in OneDrive for Business. I'm going to choose this one and I'm going to click Create. Now, of course, I could go into Show More as well, but just so you're getting an idea of how this works. And I'll go back to that window again to show you another example. And I gave you several examples in your handout to kind of get your thought process going as well. But what's going to happen is first you have to build this from scratch, saying, first off, what is the identity of the folder? If you click on the folder icon, you're going to be navigating to your root drive of your OneDrive for Business. So I can click on the arrow on the right, and then I'm going to navigate to the specific folder that I want it to be based on. Then I have to go into New Step. Then I have to fulfill the features for that new step. I have to say that here's the action that I want this step to have. I also need to do the triggers. So what's going to trigger this action or this workflow to run? That's where this can be a little complicated. This is going to be beyond our scope of our class today. We can do things like this in a more advanced class. So I'm not even going to continue this. I just wanted you to see what you're going to end up getting. So we need to know a lot more information to be able to start from scratch. So how can we do things on a more simplistic method? Let me go back to the left-hand side, back to my flows again. I'm not even going to keep this or anything. I'm just going to go back and I'm going to say, okay. I'm okay on leaving that page. I'm going to go back to New Flow. And I'm going to go to this one called Describe It to Design It. Describe it to design it. Because a lot of times we want Copilot and other aspects of this Power Automate to help us design the workflow that we want. So up at the top it says, describe what you want to automate and AI will help make it happen. So where it says send a message on Teams every time a new file is added to SharePoint, that's just a suggestion. So if you have something that you want your workflow to do, you can describe it. You can type it in. So I had written one down that I was just going to put in here so I don't have to redo this. Get a notification when a new item is added to a SharePoint list. I can click the submit. Just like when you chat in Copilot, it's going to say working on it, and it's giving me here, after you review this AI generated flow suggestion, click next to configure it. So it's first showing me here's the trigger. So when a new item is created in SharePoint, the action is this is what the flow will do. It will post a message in a chat or a channel. That's what it's suggesting. If I go to the bottom right and click next, it's really a wizard where it's walking you through step by step, which is fantastic that we have that capability. But what it's showing right now is these are the tools that the applications that I need to have access to. So it's connecting, and on the right hand side I've got a green check mark to say it understands that I'm connected. So it knows I'm connected to the required applications to run this flow. Down at the bottom, though, where it says fill in the details, I actually have to give it the SharePoint site address. So I click that, and it's going to give me a list of my SharePoint sites. I'm going to choose, let me kind of scroll down here a little bit. You could see these are all of the ones that I can choose from. And I'm going to choose accounting department. So I have this accounting department. I'm going to choose that one. And then it wants to know the name of the SharePoint list. So from that SharePoint site, here's the lists, the Microsoft lists that I can choose from. These are the only ones available within that SharePoint site. I'm going to choose this one called Issue Tracker. Then the Microsoft Teams recipient, we enter in the email address of the recipient of this. So I'm going to start typing and it looks through my emails. And I'm going to say I want it to go to Jolynn, which is of course myself, but just so you could see how you fill this out, when you're done with this, go to the bottom right and click Next. You always have your back arrow through the wizard also to go back to the previous step, but it's really a matter of, letting the wizard take you through and answer the questions. And the nice thing about it is now, we didn't have this before, was we would have to go to the URL of the SharePoint site, copy the URL and paste it in there. Now it actually is easy and gives us drop-down lists. So then it says the new designer, it's telling me the new designer can't be used for this flow yet. They haven't updated everything in the new Power Automate. So unfortunately, I can't use this one, but you can see that it's going to give me additional features that I could go ahead and I would just go through the next steps, fill in all my details. Then when I'm done, it would give me a finish or it would say run. If it's going to be an instant flow, it would give you run. And you would click the run button and the flow is going to automatically run, just so you're aware of how that would work. So anyway, I'm sorry, I came to one that I can't use right at the moment, but just so you got an idea of a way that you could actually use that one. But let me go back. I want to go back to my flows again. Well, actually, I could go to a couple of different places. I'm going to go to New Flow, and there's a couple of places that I showed you already that we could get to New Flow. I went to the top of the right-hand side, top left of the right-hand side, I should say. And from the New Flow dropdown, I'm going to click Template. I could have also gone to the left-hand side and gone to another. There's a couple of other locations to get to this. But this is the place you will probably use the most. So this is where I'd like you to focus practicing. And by the way, just so you're aware, in your handouts, I'll go through a couple of this with you, but it talks about different options for Power Automate with accounting. Let me kind of show you what I mean by some of this. When we talk about using Power Automate in an accounting department, you can leverage several different options here. If you have any type of a flow, like let's say people email an invoice to you and it comes from certain people. You could say, go to Outlook, and when an email is sent to this email address with this subject and it has an attachment, I want you to take the attachment and save it to my OneDrive or save it to my SharePoint, and you choose where you want it to be saved. That is something that I would definitely do in accounting. So when we talk about invoice processing, that would be an example of invoice processing. Or let's say that you have people that are tracking expenses. So they fill out, maybe you have a form that they fill out an expense report. Then it has to go through an approval process. We can use Power Automate to help us with that. We have so many different options if you stop and think about what it is that you do and the things that can or should be automated. It's amazing what we could do. Email notifications are a big one. We want to be able to automate when things are, if this changes, do this. If this is added and it has this word in it, do this. So if you kind of think about your day-to-day tasks that you do, think about all the ways that you could automate those processes by looking through some of these scenarios. Now, of course, in your handout, I have a ton of different scenarios and some examples and things like that. But let's get back to actually seeing how this works. So when you are in the templates, which is my favorite place to go, what you're going to see is you could search for a template at the top. So if I knew I was looking for something specific, I would just search for it. Otherwise, you have different categories that will filter the options across the top. You have access to all of the templates. And by the way, these templates, this list of templates continues to grow. Microsoft keeps adding more to this. You could go to the category at the top for top picks. You could go to the category at the top for shared with me. So if somebody shares a workflow with you, this is where you could see those. We have remote work. We have workflows that are approval related, which may be definitely a category that you want to check into. We have buttons where we could click a button to run a flow. We have Visio, data collection. We have email processes. And just to kind of talk about the email, because I work with a lot of accounting departments, finance departments, and this is a category that we spend a lot of time on because we want to automate email processes. Because if an email comes in with this, we want it to go through a workflow. So this is something that I would recommend you spend some time in, is looking at what these choices are for these templates. So just so you could see what you're looking at is the icons at the top of each of these cards, these little rectangles, is the icons representing the applications that are required for that workflow. Like this one that I have my mouse on right now, this requires a Microsoft form, it requires Outlook, and it requires SharePoint. And it says it's a form processing to email and SharePoint. And you can see that at the bottom left, it says it's automated. And it's got the ID number, because each one of these templates has a unique ID number. The unique ID number is on the right-hand side. A unique ID number. I didn't mean that. That's not in this window. This is the number of flows that have been made by that template. But each one of the templates does have a unique ID number because I can search by them. But anyway, just so you could see how some of these work, as you are kind of looking through this, get daily reminders in email. Email yourself new tweets about certain keywords. I mean, there's so many different options that are available that are related to email. So anyway, just so you could see, create a to-do task when you are mentioned in a 365 Outlook email. You want it to create a new task when you're mentioned. I'm going to go ahead and click on that one because I want you just to see what's going to happen when you come in. This is probably the easiest way to create a flow. Up at the top, it says create a to-do task when you're mentioned in a 365 Outlook email, so it's required that we have Outlook and we have Microsoft To Do. Gives you a brief description of it, and down below, it needs to make sure that you are signed in. So right now, it isn't signed in on my To Do for whatever reason, so I'm going to click Sign In. Once I have the green check mark, the continue will be available because it has to ensure first that I have the correct applications and I'm connected. I'm going to click OK. Once again, it's going to use a wizard to really walk you through step by step to see how this process works. So first it comes in and it says when a new email mentioning you arrives, it's going to go into create a task. But you can see that it says invalid parameters on this create a task. So if I click on it, it opens up a window which will allow me to say this is where I want it to go. So if I click in that to-do list, because it didn't know what part of my to-dos I should put this in. So I have to tell it. So if you get an error, something red, it's letting you know you have to give it more detail. So I'm going to say that I wanted to go to HR benefits as an example. Or I could say I wanted to go to my task list. Then the title, mentioned by, I have to choose who the email is going to be from and in which or what is going to be the subject. Then I can put in due dates, due date reminders. I can put in importance levels. I can fill out any of this other detail. But back on the grid in the middle of the window, just so you're noticing, there's additional circles with plus signs which allow you to add in different steps. So when an email comes in that is mentioning me in an at mention, if I wanted to add another step to that, I could click that circle with a plus sign. Otherwise, right now, it just has these 2 steps, but I could add another step to be after create a task as well. So we can continue to grow this by adding additional tools that may be needed. Notice Copilot is on the right-hand side. Copilot is always here to help you as well. But to kind of take this full form here, at the top right is the save. So once you create a flow, you can click the save icon, and I didn't fulfill everything, but once you click save, you can actually then have the workflow run. So it tells you at the top left, your workflow is ready to go. We recommend you test it. At the top right, there's a beaker icon with test. You could actually run a test to make sure that the workflow runs. Matthew, do we have a question?
Yeah, someone was wondering if you were planning to, or if you could cover a SharePoint list.
What a SharePoint list is?
Uh,
Or how a
I s-
workflow?
I suppose the question would be asking what yeah, maybe in a workflow.
Okay, so
Yeah.
let me jump back to templates because that workflow was actually created. That was already
Right.
done. Okay, so if I come back here, I could just search in my templates, and this is where I would recommend, and I could just say Microsoft List. And that's going to bring up anything that is generally related to a workflow within Microsoft Lists. So send form responses, because sometimes we have a Microsoft list created in SharePoint, and we can say if a new item is added to this, we want it to automatically create a workflow, sending an email notification or posting to a team channel post, or send a text message, or send a voicemail message, or whatever the case would be. We can trigger it to do that. So highly recommend just searching in the templates to find which of these is what you would want. So right now, here's one as an example. Post adaptive card to Teams when new item is created in a SharePoint list, or wrote emails as per the language detected in AI. All of this is going to be related to a list. Now, of course, if I have something more specific, I might want to use Copilot to have me help me build it, where I could have gone back and done the description, depending on what it is that I want that list to do. But let me add one more thing to this. Oops, sorry. I got to get that off my screen here. Got to move that away because it was covering up the back of mine for me here, but just to give you an idea. I'm going to actually go to SharePoint. I'm going to go to a SharePoint site because I just want to show you something. Come on. Workflows can be built right in the application as well. So depending on what it is you're working with, and on the left-hand side, I have this policy list. This policy list is actually in a Microsoft list. So just to give you an idea, a lot of times I go straight to the list to create the workflow. So once this comes up, there we go. Okay, so the menu going across the top has this automate. This is going to be one thing that I could do. I could go to automate. I could set a reminder, or I could go into rules and create a new rule, which would create that workflow, or I can configure approvals. So if I want to have an approval for the items that are entered within this Microsoft list, these are built right here. But just to show you, if I go to rules and I click create a rule, just so you could see what it's going to give you. So this is basically stating I want to create a rule based on this Microsoft list. Otherwise, I would probably type in a description, but an item is modified, a new item is created, an item is deleted. I'm going to say when a new item is created. So I can say always, or if the new item matches this condition. I'm going to say when a new item is created, I want to get an email. And I'm going to say it's going to be based on me. I want to get an email. Or I could say based on in this column, whoever that person's name is. But I'm just going to click create so that when a new item is added, it's going to automatically run this rule and I will get an email notification. That's how easy it can be to create a workflow directly within the application itself. Okay, so that's usually where I go, is right to the application, to the file, like to that list or to that document library. Now I'm just going to close that manage rule window. That's actually showing me all of the rules I have created for this list. So just so you could see, if I add a new item, I'm going to put in a title. I'm going to put in a due date. I'm going to put in a status. I could put in a subject to test, the person responsible, and that person responsible can be the trigger to say I want to email this person. That was one of the options that I could have chose. I have attachments, all this other stuff. But once I save that entry, I actually receive an email message letting me know that something new has been added. Now it does take a second, so I'll come back to Outlook here and show you that. But let me show you another built-in option that you have. I'm going to go to the left-hand side to this legal documents. These are things that we don't have to be in the big Power Automate window to create these from scratch or use a template. These are things you can use every day. So let's say that I'm in a SharePoint document library, or I'm in Microsoft Teams in my Files tab of a channel, which is a document library. You have built-in workflows. Can I create some? Absolutely, because when I'm in this document library, notice it has Automate on the menu at the top. So just like we saw a minute ago with the list, I could go into Rules, create a new rule, and do the same thing like I just did. But let me show you the ones that are built in. So let's say that I have a file, this ABC sales. If I right click on the name of this file here within SharePoint, I can hesitate on Automate. A built-in workflow is to send a file for approval. So I have this request sign off. It's a built-in Power Automate workflow. I'm going to click on it, and what it allows you to do then, it's going to have to connect. So it's connecting to SharePoint, it's connecting to Outlook, it's actually connecting to Microsoft Teams, and it's connecting to another app in the Power App programs called Approvals. So it's connecting to all these different programs that we don't even need to worry about in the background, because this is something that we use regularly. It's already built for us. And what's going to happen on the right-hand side then is I can choose who do I want to send this to. I can type in a message to give them via email and in Teams to say, can you please review this file and let me know if you want any changes or whatever. So I can type in, oops, please review this file, blah, blah, blah. I would put in my email message to them, but at the bottom, all I have to do is click Run Flow. It's an instant flow that is going to happen immediately. So once oops, I had a typo on that, but that's okay. I clicked Run Flow, it automatically was sent. But notice here in my SharePoint document library, we have this sign-off status column that gives us, like, this one is pending, this one is approved, this one was rejected. So this column automatically gets added if it's not already there. So if you've not used it before, it will automatically add this column. But where did I get notified? I got notified back in Teams. So if I come to Microsoft Teams on the top left in my activities category, I can go there and I can actually see, oh, here's another approval that came through. This was sent from training in Utah because I actually had an approval that was actually going through a Microsoft list, which was expense reports. And I wanted to be notified of that. So I can go in here, click on the file for this training in Utah, look at the expense report, And then I can either approve it or reject it. So that's something that would probably be beneficial for you guys as well. So just so you could see, it opens up the file, but let me go back to Teams here. Oops, sorry, let me go back to Teams. And I can click approve or reject. And the one that I just received from that ABC sales is here. Matthew, I'll be right with you. I can see that here's the file for that ABC sales. I can type in a comment like, please change this to 2025. And I could reject the file or approve it. So these are built-in workflows that we don't have to be an expert at it to use. Matthew, someone have a question?
Yes, someone was wondering. Their Power Automate told them they're using too much data. Is there different plans? Do they need to upgrade if they use it a lot?
Well, that can depend on what the workflow is. So unfortunately, I can't specifically tell you. That would be something that they would probably want to double check with their IT department, because an error like that can be coming from different aspects. It can be coming from the workflow, how it was built itself. So, and they could have limits set up in the background that I'm not aware of. Just so, yeah, unfortunately, I would have to have them talk to their own IT.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. But I just wanted to open up my email to let you know that I had workflows going on in the background. Here's that policies that I was talking about. This came from that title of test that I did. Here's the workflow. It's giving me a link to go directly to that. So I got that email notification. Here's the other notification. And here's that please approve. I got it via email, and I got a notification in Microsoft Teams. And then here it's letting me know, because I was the one that sent the approval to myself. I did get a notification back letting me know that it wasn't approved. Okay, and here's the message that they sent back to me. I can view the file by going to this link right in that email as well, but I also was notified back in Microsoft Teams. So when I was in Teams, here's the approval of that expense report for training in Utah, but here's the rejected file that I sent for approval. Just so you know, this is all coming through Microsoft Teams in the activities category. And what you're seeing on the right-hand side is the kind of that whole workflow. Here's where it started, here's where it went, all of that detail. And if you look at my list of my activities, on the left-hand side of this icon is the approvals icon. I can directly open the approvals app, which is used in your workflows when you say, I need this approved. If I click open, it's going to open the approvals app. Sorry, it's opening it on my other screen here, but let me slide that over. But just so you know, it's going to open approvals. So then I can see everything that has been sent through an approval, whether it was a document, or if it was a Microsoft list, or if it were an Excel file, it was an email. Anything that I send for approval, I can view it here. Here's the received and here's the sent. I can create a new approval request from the top as well. And to kind of jump back to my approvals, or I should say to my Power Automate here, I can actually access all of that on the left-hand side. I can, when I'm back here in Power Automate again, I can go to the left-hand side and click approvals. Just so you know, I can access it from multiple places, okay? But my recommendation, to just kind of recap what we were talking about, go through your handout. Look at the different examples that I gave you. Invoice processing, expense tracking, financial reporting, budget monitoring. Budget monitoring is something that I use in an Excel workbook. If somebody enters in an amount in a specific column, I need to know if it were over $5,000 or whatever. I could say that that needs approval, and I could have it be sent through an approval process. So watch for the things that are right in the application that you're using. So we don't always have to go to the approvals. We don't have to go to my flows. We don't have to always go to templates here in Power Automate. We can be going directly to the application as well. Whether I'm in SharePoint, document library, I'm in SharePoint lists, I'm in Microsoft Teams, and I'm in another application like Microsoft Forms, automation features are built right there. Otherwise, I do recommend, and this is how I learned it and learned what choices were out there, open up Power Automate and go to templates. That's going to be the easiest way to pinpoint these would help you. So as you're kind of looking through these different cards of these suggestions, you can be thinking about how you can be using that specific one. And it's easiest to get started by doing it within the application, whether it's SharePoint, Teams, whatever, or coming to the templates. That's your starting point. But don't forget about the Learn on the left-hand side. And the websites that I did give you links to at the end of your handout will be great to go back to as well. So, Matthew, I'm going to bring it back to you. Did we have anybody else with any questions or anything?
It looks like we have no further questions as of right now.